pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We'll begin the meeting with a moment of silence, and as we do, if we could remember and remember Jack Buckley and keep in our thoughts and prayers as family. Mr. Buckley served for 6 terms from 1964 in the House of Representatives of Massachusetts for the town of Abington. 1975, he became the Secretary of Administration and Finance. In 1979, the interim president of the community college system. He spent 10 years as a town moderator in Abington. His son is John Buckley, the Registrar of Deeds in Plymouth County, and he was a great public servant, powerful man, and we miss him. This meeting's being recorded and televised by the local cable company. I'd like a motion to approve bill and payroll warrants.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Acceptance of correspondence in the read file.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Public forum. Anything that anybody wants to talk about is not on the agenda. Approval of meeting minutes, open session December 17th, 2019.
So moved.
Second.
Is there any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Abstain. And open session on January 14th.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Town administrators report. Frank?
Just one quick thing. We were notified Friday that there are changes that need to be made to the floodplain in order to continue to be eligible as a community to participate in the National Flood Insurance Program. I'd like permission from the Board of Selectmen to forward the recommended bylaw change to the Planning Board for review and hearings.
So moved.
Second. Discussion? Questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Budget review, Frank?
I will be meeting tomorrow with budget managers to review the budgets that were submitted and to update those items and bring forward hopefully a budget that will conform to the guidelines the board voted last week.
Anybody have any comments or questions? Policies and procedures, network password policy.
You have a policy recommendation from Josh McNeil. I've reviewed it. I'm comfortable with the provisions, and I'd like to recommend that the town adopt that network password policy.
Does anyone have any questions? Okay, all those in favor?
We didn't make a motion. I don't think.
What, pardon?
I don't think we made a motion on that, did we?
Oh, okay. Someone like to make a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Anyone have any questions on the motion?
No.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Sorry. Electioneering during absentee and early voting policy. Clerk Riley.
Hi, how are you? What I presented to you was actually what was recommended by the Secretary of State's office. I had an election worker training, and they said that since we're going to be doing early voting, that, as it says, states in there that the voters who early vote should have the same courtesy that their voters do on a regular day. And it would only just make sure that people aren't harassing them as they're coming into early vote. So it's basically what's already in place for Election Day, just so that it also covers the early voting time frame. So
they honor the same lines on the sidewalk.
150-foot rule, yeah. Yeah, you don't have to have police out there or anything like that. It's just mainly probably more so like inside and stuff so that people aren't,
We're
if
going to
somebody's,
send Dawn out to chase them.
Okay.
won't work. But that's basically what it's for. And like I said, I actually just copied another town's. It was West Bridgewater's, I'll be honest, I'll let you know. And it's pretty simple and cut.
Yeah, just to be clear, people are aware that on election day, they don't approach people within the perimeter of the town hall.
Right. And it's
They
marked
don't
by a
have
line. in the-
Marked by lines, and just
Yeah.
observe those lines every day now
Correct.
during early voting.
Yeah, the Secretary of State's office feels that with the high publicity that you're going to see, they had some, I think maybe from some other states, somebody that came in with like vests with a bunch of pins on it. And the pins had some people, like George Bush and people that are not on the ballot. They can wear those types of things, but amongst those pins, they had people who were on the ballot. And, the election workers had to go through and say, take that one off, take that one. It's crazy. She did also say they had a woman who had a shirt on, and she was campaigning with the shirt, and she was asked politely to, go in the ladies' room, put the shirt on, reverse it, and she just went whoop and voted in her bra. So, people are out there and they're challenging the clerks. She said they're trying to see what they, what can. So, anyways, I just want to protect my poll workers and my election workers and the voters. So,
Okay.
I hope that
Thank
you.
you. That'll take a motion because we're going to be signing the policy.
I just have a couple of questions.
Yeah.
Sure.
The early voting, how
Let's
many
have a
days-
motion first.
Oh, yeah, okay. I'd be happy to make a
motion.
motion that we accept
Second.
these
Okay.
policies that the clerk has put forth.
Okay.
You have
How
some
many
questions?
days ahead is the early voting?
So for the presidential primary, and it'll be from February 24th to February 28th. It's only required for the hours that the town clerk's office is open, but I did extend it to Friday because I think a lot of people have Fridays off. So we're going to be Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, 8 to 4, and Tuesday from 8 to 7:30. It will be publicized on the web. It's actually already on the calendar of events and stuff. But then in November, it's 11 days, and I don't know the specific dates, but it's 11 days in November. In September, they didn't, the September 1st primary, there was legislation to do early voting for that, but I'm not sure which one in the House or the Senate, which one of them ixnayed it. So I don't think there's enough attention to that election to warrant the cost. It's a huge cost.
And the absentee ballots for...
They're available now.
They're now. Okay.
Yep, I just did a press release, so the absentee ballots are in the office right now, so, okay.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah. And the difference, really quick, so while people are listening, I'll also say this, nomination papers are available. That is also on the web of the positions that are available. And the difference between absentee voting and early voting is no excuse voting. So you can just come in and vote. You don't have to be absent from town. It doesn't have to be because you're ill or anything like that. And absentee voting are the three reasons are illness, you're absent from town, or for religious beliefs only. And you sign an affidavit that states that. So,
Thank you.
okay.
Okay. Anything else? Okay. All those in favor of that policy?
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Okay. Thanks, Tom. New business, act on request of Town Clerk Don Valley to sign the warrant for the March 3rd, 2020 presidential primary election.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor? Okay. Act on the application of Mary Lou's for a change of address in connection with a common vittler's license currently held at 564 Washington Street. Licensee is relocating to 180 South Avenue.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion?
Change in an error.
Questions? I know.
Wow. Any time frame on that move? Do we know? Or?
I would suspect they'll be in there in a week or two. The owner's really anxious to get that up and running. It's the old South Avenue Motors building.
The sign's already out in front. Mary Lou's coming soon.
All those in favor?
Aye.
February meeting schedule? Suggestions? I don't think we have to meet next week. That'll mean four weeks in a row.
Four in a row.
We don't
A lot.
need that. 11th and 25th? Does that make sense?
That works.
Yeah.
Okay. Old business, fire chief selection process. Frank?
Purpose in having this on the agenda is there were issues that we had to address with council, centering around negotiations and other concerns, which have been completed in executive session. We now need to, in open session, vote the position of the board as it relates to an exam for a fire chief. I spoke with Civil Service Friday, actually in Boston. I met with the reps at the MMA conference. As of this moment, we do not have an exam for fire chief. So the vote that this board may take to opt to seek a list through a written exam through HRD is for future impact. I think it's important that the board know that it reserves its rights in the event that we don't have a timely opportunity to hold an exam, should we need one, that we would then return to what we had previously discussed, which was an assessment center. So at this point, I would recommend that the board vote to, when available, seek a written exam for fire chief. It doesn't mean that our current chief is going anywhere. It simply gives us a list from which to appoint in the event he does leave. We should always have a standing list.
Okay, would someone like to make that motion, and then we'll discuss it?
Make the motion.
Second.
Discussion?
How long is that list good for?
Once it's issued, 2 years.
2 years?
Do you know if they released a reading list yet?
I talked to the chief today about that, and he said they have their group has reviewed the list, but nothing's been released yet.
That usually is, that gets established.
Usually a good sign
Yeah,
that
that gets
they're moving
established.
forward.
Test.
Anybody else? All those in favor? Aye. And Whitman Hanson Regional School District audit. Frank?
As you know, I previously came to the board to discuss having an audit of the Whitman Hanson Regional School District, not in the traditional sense of a financial audit, but rather a look back and a look forward on revenues and expenses to try and establish a sense of where we expect to go in the future. It's an integral part of developing a sustainable budget plan. I had some concerns because there are a group who are seeking to perhaps come up with an evaluation to de-regionalize the Whitman Hanson School District. I could not be more opposed to that concept, and this audit would not have any relationship to that type of an analysis. We simply want to understand how the money comes in, how it's allocated, what the growth factors are, and see if we can project out, very similar to what we did with the town. And I guess I might have ruffled a few feathers Friday because I spoke to the new town administrator in Hanson and said, I don't think we're ready to move forward right now, and that's the reason it's on the agenda, but I believe we are ready to move forward.
Okay, yes, we had volunteered to pay for half of that audit.
Yeah, and I did that, by the way, without the input of the board. I simply was expressing.
You're just acting on your own as
I was
like a cowboy,
expressing
right?
my concern.
Yeah, I think getting that information is important. It is not related to any desire. No one should think it's related to any desire on our part, speaking for myself right now, but I'm pretty sure speaking for the rest of you in deregionalization. I did have a conversation yesterday with Laura, the chairperson in Hanson of the Selectmen, who was anticipating a difficult meeting tonight. She said a couple of the items on the agenda were an override establishing an override committee, probably similar to the one we did, and also a deregionalization committee. And we talked about that, and I made it clear to her, and because she needed clarity, that as far as Whitman is concerned, we're still firm in our stand that the statutory method should be used this year. We are also not in favor of deregionalization. And however, I wish her luck with the meeting. I'd like to say it was a perfect phone call. She understands the situation. She understands all of the elements of the situation, and she's trying to get through a difficult time in her town with some dicey input from some of the members of her town about the relationship between the towns. I reminded her of a couple of things. I reminded her of a couple of years ago when we were able, we thought, to only give a 5% increase in our assessment for the schools. However, our most conservative, fiscal conservative selectman, Brian, said that we should let's give the schools what they need this time. Hanson was at the time recommending an 8.5% increase in the assessment, and we were going to do 5 because that's what we could afford. Well, what did we do at that time? We without hurting the levy, inside the levy limit, by using free cash, we came up with about $800,000 to match what we needed to match for the children in the town of Whitman and Hanson, K through 12. We did that at some sacrifice. We are partly in the position that we're in today fiscally because of that move that we made. So Whitman has shown that it is interested in the health of the school system. It's shown it by making a sacrifice at a time when it was hard to make it. That is a fact, and that ought to be clear. That ought to be clear also if you go back historically and look at the effect of what not using the statutory method has had on Whitman over the last, since 2017 only, not since 2007, but since 2017. We have sacrificed, is what one word you could use, something like $3.3 million. We've lost $3.3 million over those years. We're not asking for it back. We're not assigning any kind of blame or responsibility for what happened, but it's a thing that happened. And it hurts, frankly. It hurts to hear remarks from a town that we've been a partner with for a long time, that we somehow are hard or we don't care. We've shown that we do. We've shown that we do, and we've shown it in the pocket that we do. I didn't mean to go on a screed, but I was on the school committee back in 1991 when we regionalized, and I knew at that time that saved our towns when we brought K through 8 into the 9 through 12 system. It hasn't worked out perfectly since then, partly because of the state's lack of interest in helping us out. But it's been a relationship that's been a good one for a long time. We certainly hope that it can continue to be a good one. Just that this year we are going to maintain our faith in using the method that should have been voted on each year since 2007 at least by the school committee, or at least giving people the option, and that didn't happen. So I didn't mean to make a speech, but I guess I must have, because I just did. And we have to thank, and I think rather than cast aspersions, we should be thanking Randy Lamartina for getting on top of this a couple of years ago, and putting us in a position today where we, with some clarity, can look forward, and we can start planning a budget future for the town that is healthy and sustainable, and one that takes care of the schools as well as the other departments.
I appreciate the kind words, Carl. what I also want to add is just, and I don't want, Justin, I'm sure could add to this, but myself, Justin, and Frank are the ones meeting with the town of Hanson. There are some very misguided, misinformed statements going on social media right now that speaks on our current relationship and our standings. There has not been much progress, but there's no negativity, and we are going to meet again. I think there was a group consensus that we would wait until after the February 5th meeting of the school district, when they presented a budget, that we would have a clearer picture of exactly what we're working on. So for anybody to be posting that, excuse me, that we are not working with the town of Hanson is completely and utterly false. Those meetings will continue, and like I said, yes, we don't have much progress now, but they have been positive.
I think we've had 3 meetings so far, and one of the core areas of agreement is that both towns would like to see this audit performed. So at least continuing in that, maintain the good relationship that we have as a working group now. It's a key component of the strategic plan we voted to move forward with last week, if we voted or discussed. Voted. And if this on top of the budget analysis that we've done with the survey that we sent out to the town, we're putting a lot of the pieces together. This is the largest single department. It would be a big chunk of our analysis. I think we should.
You know, one other thing that I just might mention is that the connotation of audit to some implies we're looking for things. Well, we are, but what we're looking to do is assess where we were and where we're going. We're not going in there to say we think your numbers are wrong or that things have been misrepresented. We have a $53 million budget. We'd like to get an understanding of it. That's what this is all about.
Yeah, and just want to emphasize again, my relationship with the chairperson in Hanson is a cordial and a good one, and we can both see facts that we have different approaches to, and it doesn't get nasty at all. It's good, and also, and I think Randy can attest to this. Jeff Simonak in the school system knows he's working with a really tough situation, and he is doing a good job, and he's
been nothing but cooperative.
He's on top of it as he can be. That's right.
Mr. Chairman, I think that one of the aspersions thrown our way that we somehow were mismanaging this town, and then we seized upon an opportunity to use Hanson to help us balance our budget, not from the town government, but from citizens who were making these accusations. And I would say that we have done a very good job with what we had to deal with between, as you said, the $3 million that we paid extra for, so that the state is tying one of our hands behind our back, and this $3 million tied the other hand. So to suggest that we were willy-nilly with our budgets and that we're now seizing upon this opportunity to have Hanson bail us out couldn't be further from the truth.
Boy, I'd second that. I'm not, except we did we did the best we could with our budgets, but I think that Randy's committee that just finished work has shown that there are things that we could have done differently, and we made some choices last week to start doing things differently in the future, and I think that makes.
Yep.
I think that's just true. I think there were some mistakes that we made, but what we were trying to do is to keep our taxes low, and they are, and we tried to maintain services, and we did. But we put ourselves in a positions now where we need to follow the procedures that we okayed last week. It's a great start. When it gets, I can't wait until Maytown meeting when we convince the town to allow us to hire someone to put all of those plans into a strategic plan document that we finally have, and then we can get rewarded for having best practices.
And I would add one more thing to wrap this up. Anybody who's seen Mr. Madden's report, and also the report I presented at the joint meeting, Mr. Madden's recommendations were presented before any decision on a school assessment method was determined. So for us to be able to avoid the override was not based on
Right.
the school assessment method decision.
Exactly, exactly. Good point.
Thank you.
Okay. Anything else?
Is it okay if I ask a question?
Sure, go ahead.
Thank you. One of the things that I like about Mr. Madden's report is that it's based on best practices. The critical piece about moving to the statutory method in 1 year, not moving to the statutory method in general, but in 1 year. The woman who came in from DESE, she recommended that you work together and kind of work that out, because it can be such a difficult process to move in 1 year from the alternative method, full alternative method, to the full statutory method. And I've made the argument that without that best practice recommendation, that is a critical flaw. I wish you would reconsider that as a best practice. I mean, you've gone out of your way to implement so many best practices, to leave that critical one out, or to not have that recommendation as part of such a difficult decision is a piece of the... If you had that, I think I would be behind you. But without that, it's very difficult to stand behind such a difficult decision. So please consider that.
Okay, thank you, Sean.
I want to comment on that. I was at the same meeting, and I believe the recommendation was to communicate, to work with the communities. I don't believe she made a recommendation that we make a adjustment transition by not fully assessing on the statutory method, but rather to keep those lines open and talk about it. And that's what we're doing. It would actually be inappropriate for DESE to come in and make a recommendation that a town not assess in accordance with the statute, but I understood her advice was to work together. And we're trying to do that now.
Sean, I just want to say that the challenge in doing anything between the alternative method and the statutory method this year is that it would take an amendment of the regional agreement, which would take a vote of both town meetings and approval by DESE before the schools present us a budget. So it's a timing issue at this point. I don't know that all of those can happen between now and town meeting.
Yeah. It's interesting how that happened. I don't think it was by accident. And I think a lot of things can happen if people make them happen, you know. Maybe you could find, is there another town that went from another region that went from a full alternative to a full statutory method in 1 year? Can you find a community that did that successfully? Even having some support for those decisions would be helpful. I just feel like the financial position that Hanson finds himself in right now is forcing them to make some difficult choices. And why does it have to be that way? Why can't we soften the blow a little bit, even if in the long term we're going to move to the full statutory method? You know, that could alleviate a lot of tension right now. Or maybe there are creative ways to
Sean, I want to go back to an April 23rd, 2018 school committee meeting. When you hear knowing the position that we were in, that we were going to have to take money out of capital stabilization, the Hanson members of that board actually wanted more money. Okay? So we have been in that position, and our town has answered the call. We are saying we will work with Hanson. They're going to have to make some steps, Sean. Now, I know you're speaking probably about the Air Regional School District, correct? Where both towns worked into it. The problem with that is both towns were agreeing to go to the statutory method. We're not at that point. Like I've told you before, you cannot build a bridge over the Atlantic Ocean. Over a river or stream, we could. We're pretty separated right now, and with divisive online posts, that separation's only getting wider. But we sit there in those meetings, and we will continue them, and we will work with Hanson. But I think this town's position is clear on the statutory method.
Yeah, it is.
And we should bear in mind that whatever method we present and whatever budget we present, the voters in Whitman and the voters in Hanson are going to be making those decisions. We can recommend, we can guide, but in this situation, we're really not the decision makers.
Thank you, Sean.
And you're prepared to hold if the state comes in to take over the finances of the school? You are.
Pardon?
And you're prepared to hold on that if the state comes in to control the finances of the school?
That decision will be made by the two towns over a period of time.
You are, Dr. Kowalski, you are, specifically? You feel that strongly about this?
I do.
Okay.
We need to go into executive session. In accordance with Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A, Exception 2, to conduct strategy sessions in preparation for negotiations with non-union personnel, and 3, to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining if an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining or litigating position of the public body, and the chair so declares.
So moved.
Second.
Yes, yes.
Yes.
Okay, we're in executive session. We'll come out of open session only to adjourn, and executive session only to adjourn.